Okay, everybody has some type of horror story of I saw something in somebody's background and it was traumatizing, right? I have seen a dead body.
That is horrifying. Well, you have to elaborate and tell us how you saw a dead body, because that's
right?
extreme.
They were in the wake period, waiting for other family members to come and say their goodbyes before the body was taken away. And they thought, for whatever reason, that would be an appropriate time to have a business meeting. And I was legitimately traumatized for the rest of the day.
That is probably the best remote work story I've ever heard. It's episode 48 of Out of Office, and you're just in time to catch a very special guest. Meet Laurel Farrer, one of the world's most renowned remote work experts. She is the founder of Distribute Consulting, a prolific Forbes contributor, a big name at GitLab, and named on pretty much every single who's who of remote work list ever written, including winning Crossover's inaugural Voice of the Future Leadership Award just a couple of weeks ago. So tell me, Laurel, is there anything you don't do?
I'll just hire you to come be my press agent and make me sound good. How about that?
The whole world has experienced remote work in the past couple of years, but you've been doing it a heck of a lot longer than that and making some eerily accurate predictions along the way, which is a big part of why you won that Voice of the Future award. And what I'm really excited to hear today is, what changes do you think are going to define the next era of remote work?
When we were setting plans and strategies and visions in 2016, 17, 18, we wanted, ideally in the lifetime of our careers, to get to somewhere around 10% of the workforces of developed countries working flexibly full-time. We are now past 40 to 50%. We are in this very evolutionary, very dynamic phase in which we get to define the future that really opens up a multitude of paths in front of us. Mm-hmm. There's a path in which it could go, and it's really exciting and idealistic to think about what it could be. Then there's what it should be, because sometimes that ideal scenario is not necessarily realistic or even responsible considering the hypergrowth that we've gone through. And then on the other hand, there's the realistic side of what it will be is unfortunately different than either of those.
It makes so much sense thinking about the alternate realities, and they always say, expect the unexpected, and certainly in remote work's history, that is...
we should have that tattooed on our foreheads or something.
Yeah, I know, right? Certainly, a dead body, I'm sure you were just planning on that random Tuesday.
Yeah, it's great.
Let's apply that structure to conversation, and perhaps if we go in reverse order, that'll enable us to start with the depressing parts and end on the positive note.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's dive into that. What will happen? It's discouraging right now in the climate of remote work, and unfortunately, my prediction is based on the data that we're seeing, based on the case studies that we're watching, based on the media coverage. It's just consumer trends. It's not going to change anytime in the next 1 to 3 years. We live in a very, very polarized society, developed countries especially. And unfortunately, because of that social trend, that polarization is preventing progress and protection of what remote work could and should be. Mm-hmm. So we need laws around this. We need technology around this. We need policies around this. We need education around this. Like, we have an incredible amount of upskilling to do in our international workforce. And unfortunately, it's going to be stagnant for a while, unfortunately.
Those are some powerful words. And stagnant, particularly, is a word that nobody wants to hear when we're talking about progress, right? But somewhat inevitable when the period that we just had was, to use the word that you chose, hypergrowth. It's somewhat inevitable that we would plateau or potentially even decline.
That hypergrowth was not sustainable, nor wise or helpful for our global economy. So we definitely needed the hypergrowth to slow down and for us to all take a beat and say, okay, let's catch up. Let's put some intention into this change management. I mean, to even go back in time a little bit to 2019, we were begging VCs to consider remote tools as a viable investment and not seeing a lot of success there. There were national conversations with international workforce agencies and large talent brands that shall not be named that literally laughed at me when I said that remote work was a growing trend. They said, oh, it'll never amount to a thing. And then all of this happened, right? The hypergrowth came from a period of infancy of the industry. So there is a lot of foundational construction that still needs to happen, and then the catching up from the hypergrowth on top of that. We do not have the time to be fighting about if this is going to happen or not, or is work from home is better than being in office, or which form of hybrid is best. Like, those are SEO marketing driven conversations that are wasting everybody's time and frankly deteriorating our economy.
Yes, well, hopefully we can put a lot of those dumb arguments behind us in the next era of remote work. So knowing that a lot of the headlines about remote work this year have been about massive companies calling everyone back into the office, we've seen the rise of hybrid working. And so my question is, if we were to fast forward 3 years from now, and obviously we're all just guessing, right? But if you had to guess the companies that chose to stick to their guns and, actually do the right thing with a fully remote model, and the companies that called everyone back to the office, what do you think they will be experiencing 3 years from now?
This is where that should scenario comes into play, because in 3 years, we could be in a really good place as teams, as businesses, as communities, as economies. And it can come to fruition through very small, realistic changes, but it's going to take everybody's involvement, right? So that means stopping these very contradictory conversations about this or that, right? And we say, look, we all agree that work could be better. And those are pillars like asynchronous communication, process-based operations, results-based productivity measurement, and documentation. So whether you're an in-office team, a hybrid team, or a remote team, all of those are just better ways of working. And the more that we can get on that same page, the more that we will progress towards more meaningful and impactful conversations and results. Stop thinking about what the workplace model is going to be and start embracing how work happens in this century. Then we'll all be able to move forward with more and more momentum. We have to stop pretending that the future of work is coming. It's not coming, it's here. That decision was made for all of us in 2019, right? The only action that is needed for us is how to do it better.
So beautifully put. And it's not about where we work, it's about how we work. And until we start having the right conversation, we're not actually gonna be able to make the progress that we all want. And I'm curious to know, what do you think are the biggest choices that remote leaders would be making now that will have the most impact on their success or failure in this area 3 to 5 years from now?
So what we need to do as thought leaders and advocates is help mid-level managers understand their key responsibilities. They are more important than they ever have been, but their responsibilities are different. So in the future of work, we are trying to enable and equip professionals to be productive no matter where they are. So as managers, that means that you don't necessarily need to supervise their work because that work will be supervised by the individuals, but they still need help. So managers' new responsibility is to see a professional and say, how can I help you? So it's all about replacing an instinct to supervise with an instinct to support. Instead of, did you make this happen? It's, how can I help you make this happen?
Yeah, and stop checking the green light on Microsoft Teams and assuming that translates to how productive somebody is. Let's pivot into what could happen.
I think when I think of what could happen with the future of work, I just feel so excited and so inspired, because what it could be is the solution to all of the problems of business that we have been trying to solve for the past several generations, right? Like all of these economic problems and workforce problems that we've been thinking of solutions and trying to piece things together. And here it is. Like 14 of the 17 United Nations initiatives could be impacted by remote work. Like, this is world-changing stuff. Isn't that exciting to think about, that we are experiencing history right now, yeah. Right? Like the problems that we are working together to solve, I would say at the top of the list is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not just gender or race, but also neurodiversity, caretaker diversity, even age diversity, height diversity. We've known that there is a very massive diversity problem in business, especially in tech, for generations. So that's a really good one to start with that will benefit everybody, right? That will be a huge economic boost when job accessibility is distributed to more socioeconomic demographics. Then when we think even beyond that, I think economic development is massive. Let's distribute wealth in our economies. So those are the two that come to mind off the top of my head that personally motivate me on a day-to-day basis. But I want to hear your thoughts too. What problems are you excited that remote work is solving?
I love that. Well, I want to piggyback on your diversity, equity, inclusion comment, actually, because I think that it's really interesting to observe the shift as more and more companies are going not just local, it's Judy working from home on Fridays, but remote work actually expands our horizons. We can hire people internationally, people with global viewpoints and far more diverse cultural backgrounds than you would get from any two people in the same city, even although they might look quite different from each other. And that's amazing to me. We will be able to create better products, better tools, better systems that support people from a far greater range of backgrounds than you can ever get with everyone living in the same city.
Preach, right? Well, and think about the operational quality that will come from that as well. If you are able to recruit directly from your target market and put that demographic immediately into your operational processes from start to finish, so that the entire product or service is being developed by the market that you are trying to reach, your research and development mistakes and errors and risks just went down by 80%, right? So it's going to improve business in every way if we embrace what remote work could be, as opposed to trying to resist what we think it is.
Beautiful. So as we bring this to a close, for the remote leaders who are watching this and nodding along and going, oh, I love this. This is so insightful. I want to do it. Where should they start? Like, what is there some really simple, practical tip that they could do tomorrow that's a good place to begin?
So the more that all of us focus on our own behaviors and we align them, the more that we will be working effectively, regardless of our workplace model. So that's what I think everybody can and should focus on, which is great because it's free and it can be started immediately, right? So the change management doesn't have to wait for budget approval. It doesn't have to wait for executive approval. You just focus on yourself and you focus on, how can I work better with my team today? How can I communicate better? How can I establish more trust? All of those little behaviors are going to add up in those big brands that I am advising, the Microsofts, the GitLabs, the Zooms, the Logitechs, the Panasonics, everybody. That's exactly what I'm telling them too. We're building out more complex training programs on that, but you can do the exact same thing for free. So that's where we should be. It's just focusing on ourselves, focusing on our teams, and just facilitating work in a more virtual first way. That's what I would hope that the audience could take away from this conversation is, yes, Laurel and Andrew said that there was big ideas and huge potential for remote work, but don't let your takeaway and your next step be about, reducing the rural divide. Let your next step be, how can I communicate more effectively and document more effectively with my team?
What a beautiful way to finish. Thank you so much, Laurel. It has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I hope we can catch up IRL sometime soon.
I hope so too.
For anyone watching this, if you'd like to follow Laurel, here is where you can do that. In the meantime, I'm Andrew Allen, and the future of work is out of office.